Did you know there was a Nazi field marshal who climbed to the very top of the Luftwaffe, personally signed orders that condemned hundreds of thousands to slave labor, yet harbored a secret that, if ever exposed, could have prompted the very regime he served to utterly destroy him? That man was Erhard Milch. His incredible story begins not on a bloody battlefield, but with a seemingly insignificant piece of paper. By 1935, disturbing rumors began to circulate within the inner sanctums of Nazi circles. Milch's father, it was whispered, had been a Jew who converted to Christianity. Under the recently enacted Nuremberg laws, this single fact would have been sufficient to brand a senior officer racially impure and forcibly remove him from his position. The Gestapo, Hitler's notorious secret police, promptly launched an investigation. The air around Milch grew dangerously thin, laden with a silent threat of annihilation. Then, Hermann Göring, Milch's most powerful patron and the head of the Luftwaffe, did something chillingly bizarre. He convinced Milch's own mother to sign a sworn affidavit. This document outrageously claimed that Erhard was not the son of a Jewish convert husband, but rather the illegitimate child of another man within the family. In essence, the Nazi regime was willing to legally sanction adultery, even tacitly accept whispers of incest, all to ensure that Erhard Milch was not categorized as Jewish. It was in this context that Göring famously sneered, "I decide who is a Jew in the Luftwaffe." From that moment forward, Milch existed in a profound paradox, saved by the regime's twisted machinations, yet simultaneously held hostage by its arbitrary power. His survival hinged entirely on Göring's capricious favor, knowing that a single change of mood in Berlin could, at any moment, transform him into prey. Yet, Milch did not dwell on fear. He was driven by an insatiable ambition. Before the war, he had been a highly successful director at Lufthansa, renowned for his exceptional organizational skills and bureaucratic mastery. When the Nazis seized power, he swiftly rose to become State Secretary of the Reich Aviation Ministry under Göring, quickly establishing himself as a true operational engine behind the ambitious expansion of the Luftwaffe. He was not the flamboyant, crowd-pleasing orator. He was a pragmatic man in the corridors of power, in the thrumming factories, relentlessly demanding numbers and results. By 1941, as the Luftwaffe began to falter and lose its aerial superiority, Hitler desperately needed someone who could produce planes faster than bombs fell. Milch was appointed General Luftzeugmeister, the chief of aircraft production and supply, the moment he became the undisputed boss of Luftwaffe manufacturing. Imagine Germany at that time as an immense workshop engulfed in flames. Factories lay bombed and shattered. Essential workers were conscripted into the army. Shortages plagued every aspect of production, aluminum, steel, and even time itself. Milch stepped into this chaos with a cold, unyielding doctrine. Simplify designs, standardized components, and mass-produce aircraft at absolutely any cost. Under his iron-fisted direction, German aircraft output dramatically surged in 1943. He ruthlessly eliminated weak designs, enforced round-the-clock assembly lines, and pushed for efficiency with the precision of machine. On paper, it appeared to be a triumph of wartime genius. But any cause carried a horrific human meaning. To fuel this ravenous production, Milch, working in concert with Albert Speer's armament system and the SS, pulled a vast workforce from across occupied Europe. Prisoners of war, kidnapped civilians, and concentration camp inmates. They toiled in aircraft plants under unimaginable conditions: starvation, freezing temperatures, brutal beatings, and crippling exhaustion. Many died directly on the production line. Milch didn't merely know about this system, he actively demanded more. He signed requests for ever larger forced labor quotas, treating human lives as nothing more than expendable supplies. If you could have stood in a Messerschmitt or Junkers assembly hall in 1943, you would have witnessed two stark layers of reality. Above, the roaring machinery, the flying sparks, the impressive production charts that Milch proudly oversaw. Below, hollow-eyed workers with bleeding hands, desperately tightening bolts, because rifles stood menacingly behind them. Those aircraft truly rose on broken shoulders. As the war inevitably collapsed, Milch also became embroiled in the vicious internal power games of the Nazi regime. Furious at Göring's escalating failures, he supported an attempt to sideline his patron in June 1944. The disastrous result: Hitler turned on him. Milch was stripped of his real authority and swiftly pushed into the shadows. The man who once stood near the summit of power now found himself living within the confines of his own rapidly fading influence. Then, Germany fell. Milch was captured in 1945 and subsequently tried in 1946–47 in the separate Milch Trial at Nuremberg. Prosecutors meticulously presented overwhelming evidence of the slave labor system he had orchestrated for the Luftwaffe. Milch, in his defense, disingenuously argued that labor policy was the sole business of the SS and that he was only ensuring production. The tribunal unequivocally rejected this claim, finding him actively involved in the recruitment, deployment, and systemic abuse of forced labor. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for war crimes and crimes against humanity. History, however, took an uncomfortable and morally ambiguous turn. In 1951, his sentence was inexplicably reduced to 15 years, and by 1954, he was released early amidst the shifting political landscapes of the burgeoning Cold War. He lived out the rest of his days quietly until 1972, a life that ended softly, in obscurity, a stark contrast to the destructive storm he once helped to drive. So, what exactly was Erhard Milch's dark secret? It was a horrifying truth that a genocidal regime, obsessed with racial purity, was willing to openly violate its own foundational racial laws to retain a ruthlessly useful man, and that this very man, in turn, uses extraordinary power to transform hundreds of thousands of human beings into living fuel for war. Milch's story chillingly illustrates how Nazi ideology could bend for the sake of efficiency, and how people could be reduced to mere numbers so that warplanes could soar. If you desire more stories like this, where history is illuminated not merely by grand battles, but by the complex, often morally compromised choices of those who wielded immense power, please like and subscribe. Your crucial support helps me continue to uncover and narrate the real, human darkness of World War II with integrity and truth. But what truly happened to German aviation after men like Milch vanished, and who ultimately benefited from that specialized knowledge in the post-war world?